Open Jupyter Notebook and open the day 3 machine learning folder. So who got this far? Hands up if you got that far. Should I give the rest more time? So this really makes a lot more sense if we do it interactively. So I would highly encourage all of you to open Jupyter Notebook. Go to this is in the AstroHackWeek repository, day 3 machine learning. And I checked it in last night, so you should probably update your repository.
I just merged it like 10 minutes ago.
Oh, very good. Right, I forgot to merge it. Okay, so then I give you like 2 more minutes so that you all see this. There, I see it. Okay, is anyone still downloading it that wants to do it? Yes, okay. Okay.
Will it run on the iPad?
Will it run on the iPad? You have to ask Brian Granger that. Okay, maybe I'll get started. Or is anyone still downloading? Setting up? One person? Okay, maybe I get started and you can catch up in a second. So, who here has ever done any machine learning? Okay. Ever. What's the definition? Okay, so what I want to talk about today mostly is supervised machine learning, which is all about learning to predict some unknown quantity from data. So usually you have some large corpus of data, and you have some desired output that you already know. I don't know any good Astro examples of that, so I'm going to use a non-Astro example, which is like email spam detection, where you have a lot of emails and you know whether they're spam or not, and you want to predict for a new email whether it's spam. And so the way you do this is you have a corpus of training data together with the labels that you know, and you build a model of this data. And the goal of the model is to make prediction on new unseen data. And hopefully these predictions will be correct, and you can evaluate if you're doing a good job or not. And so the goal here is really to learn a model, but then to predict on new unseen data. So maybe you can learn something from observations where you know a lot about some astronomical quantity, and then you can predict them for some other unknown quantity. So that's kind of what I mean by supervised machine learning. That's what I'm going to talk about mostly today. So what the data usually looks like is a lot of numbers. So for our purposes, we're going to use NumPy arrays, and the data, which in Scikit-Learn we like to call X, is a 2D NumPy array, where each row corresponds to one sample or one observation. That's one entity you want to reason about, and one column is one feature, like which is one thing that describes the quantity. So I really should have thought about astronomical examples, but I didn't, because I'm not an astronomer.
We know X is catalog, for example, where the
Okay.
columns are measurements of magnitude or size, and then each row would be an individual astronomical object.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe I repeat this for the live stream. So good example for X would be a catalog where each row is an astronomical object, and each column is something like the size. And then in supervised learning, you have an associated output, which we like to call Y, which is usually like just a one-dimensional vector. So it's one output for each object, so one quantity you want to predict for your astronomical object. And this could either be like a continuous variable, in which case we call it regression, or it can be a discrete variable like is this a star, or what kind of object is this? So it's like that would be classification. And oh, by the way, please interrupt me at any time when you have questions. So this is at the beginning, is like more conceptual stuff, but we're going to get into like the coding in a second. If you have questions about conceptual stuff, ask me too, or ask them. And so as I said, we want to build a model, and the goal of the model is to predict some unknown quantity for new unseen data. But before we we can do this, we need to know if our model actually works well. So usually we split our data set into some training part that we use to generate the model, and then some test set on which we validate our model so that we know that it will actually do on data it hasn't seen before. So the setup here is a little bit different than, I'm not sure if I think you did some probabilistic modeling yesterday, where the goal is more to understand the model or to understand your data and model it. Here, I really want to focus on predicting some outcome variable y. Okay, so now I just want to give a very simple toy example of a data set to show you what this looks like in NumPy. I always import matplotlib and NumPy. So, we're going to use two built-in data sets from Scikit-Learn today, the digits and the iris data set, and I want to go through the digits data set in the beginning. So if you call the load digits function from Scikit-Learn, you get this object back digits, which is more or less a dictionary. It contains images, data, target name, description, and target. These are images. These are 1800 images of 8x8 grayscale pictures. And these are, so this is the first row of this n-dimensional array. And so these are handwritten digits that are stored as grayscale values, very low resolution 8x8. And so here the data is, again, each row is one sample. So you have 1800 of these samples, 1800 of these digits, and each is described by 64 grayscale values. And for each of these 1800 samples, you have an output, and the associated output here is what is the digit, what was written. It's a number from 0 to 9, so it's just like which digit is it. So this is like a 10-class classification data set. So the goal here is to learn from this data to distinguish these 10 digits and to create a model that can say, is this a 0, is this a 1, and so on. So yeah, and for use of Scikit-Learn, we always need to put the data in this 2D array shape, number of samples times number of features. And then we can split the data. And there's a function in Scikit-Learn to split the data, it just splits off randomly 25% of the data, called train test split. And we use this on the data together with the target. Now we get out our training data set, which is a two-dimensional array, and the training labels, test data and test labels. So, and what I want you to do is just do the same thing with the iris data set, use the load iris function to get this dictionary that contains the data and the labels, and then see how many features are there, how many labels are there, and how many data points are there. And then you can, I think you did some matplotlib, so maybe you can do a scatter plot to visualize part of the data set for the iris data set. So there's solutions here always. So if you remove this commented out thing, it'll load a solution, so don't do that. Okay, so now please load the iris data set, look at the shapes, look at number of features, then try to visualize it with a scatter plot. And now we circle. You have like 2-3 minutes for this, maybe? Hopefully. Oh, anyone have problems setting up the IPython notebook? Okay.
So when you do target, is it representing the label for each pixel?
No, there's a label for each of the images. Each image, so this is a 0.
Okay.
I also have.
Oh, yeah. Wait, this is, what do they mean again? You. Okay, yeah. we can do that.
If you want.
Did they work well before?
We didn't really have many exercises.
Okay. You can announce and distribute them? You can announce and distribute them? Okay, sorry.
Okay, like we did on Monday, we're going to have green and red post-its again. If you have a question that you can't solve or that your table can't solve for you, put a red post-it where someone can see it. Your laptop, or if your laptop's not visible, your head works too. Put a green post-it on if you're done so that people can see, you know, how many people are finished.
Does anyone else see green as yellow? Okay.
Yellow is green. Pretend it's green.
Okay.
Right. So I'm not sure what this is.
So this is so these are like 1,700 something digits. Each of them is an image.
Yes.
This image depicts a 0, right? This is like a very low resolution 0.
Target is the class.
And so the target is what is the digit? So it's for this one, for this first image, it's 0 because the picture depicts a
So
0.
I mean, like the label, like for example, this is like what you do for pattern recognition, and then this is like the label for all possible class or targets or
So
whatever you call that.
This
For-
is a true label.
this is the true label, yeah.
True. So the target is what we're trying to.
Yeah, that's what you're trying to predict.
So it's actually a 0, but it's represented in the data like that. Yeah.
So, I mean,
it means truth.
Yeah. Yeah, so we need, for supervised learning, we need some truths to learn from. So we can't just extract it somehow from the data. So it probably would have been better if I had an astronomical data set.
Just tell people that it's stars.
Yeah, that's an image of a star, clearly.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of tutorials that have been written. So if you wanted to like post a link to some astronomical data sets.
Yeah, probably some stuff Jake did.
Yeah, Jake did, and we had another summer school about a month ago,
Oh, cool.
where we did some stuff too.
So for this second sample, we can't not show because
Yeah.
everybody something different. It's not
Yeah.
images. Okay.
It's
I
not
still
images.
don't know what it is. Okay.
Hmm?
I still don't know what it is.
You can look at the description. So there's this attribute called desker that I mentioned there in the exercise text that tells you what it is.
So from Scikit-Learn, you got data sets, import load iris.
Like, I'm not able to fetch from upstream, and I don't understand, like, so I only have like
If you do print on it, it looks much better.
yeah, well, but my upstream is still.
Yeah. Okay. Oh. Can you read the script? Can you read the thing from the back?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I could make it larger if it's hard. It's okay. Okay.
When it tries to execute the matplotlib inline or mvag, it gets this.
Try inline instead of.
Yeah,
Re-
we tried
We tried.
inline.
Did you restart the kernel when you changed
no,
it?
No.
Ah, no. But it failed. So, kernel.
Okay. Hey, how are you doing?
How are you feeling?
Not great. Yeah, I should really look at one of Jake's data sets. But what can you do? Well, that's not yours, right? Because you drink tea. You should have followed along.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that. I got all the stuff.
Okay. Basically, it is work with the fraction of your data.
And the data points.
And to train it.
Yeah. So I think they're 140.
But what's the target?
If you want to use all the features, you can use
So
all
the target is the
Sometimes you might first train on a subset and gradually expand it.
I think
Okay, because I've never done machine learning.
No, I never.
So load, they have these fake data sets available. So you can load the digits. Right? So you would do the same thing, load the iris data. It has some properties, so you can explore what the properties are.
If you print on it, it looks much better.
Some data.
The same problem.
You'll see what
Yeah.
it looks like. This one is much narrower. That's the real purpose of it. One is to get every
Keys function in the output of the iris. There's
Oh, sorry. Red. Normally this makes a plot appear.
Yeah, so you need to do matplotlib inline to...
But it showed this one, so I don't know why.
Something about nbag is doing it.
What does nbag do?
The back end, you choose the back end.
Yeah. It chooses the way to display figures. But that's actually... sorry.
It has to have a figure.
There's other backends, but this one lets you zoom in, which is cool.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, okay,
I don't know. No, I mean, I don't know this back end, but this is I've seen. Like you.
Yeah. So this is like new in Matplotlib 1.3, I think.
Okay.
So. Is that Seaborn?
No, this is a package that Daniel Foreman Mackie and I wrote together.
Which is not called. I thought it was called Triangle.
It was called Triangle, and we renamed it Corner recently to make it. So there's only one name, but I like the way that it appears here.
Yeah.
And I'm just about to try and see if I can zoom around in it. I don't know if
Actually, First I thought you loaded the solution, but you didn't.
No.
Because the solution looks different. Yeah. Okay, no, cool.
Use Seaborn or whatever.
No, I did the same, but I didn't plot the upper triangular because it's
the same, yeah.
It's the same, but yeah. Cool, yeah, so that's... okay, you got a done sticker. Very good.
Sorry to... Oh, okay, yeah. Because I feel bad, I know, like, that's a pain in the ass thing, but yeah, I've, like, missed it so much, so stay away.
You're good.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, that's
I'll do the same and we'll see what's
You guys have any problems?
I have no idea what to do. She has a problem, she cannot open notebook.
I think she's just got an old version of our Python notebook, so I don't think it's just updated to Bottom. Is what I suspect.
So this notebook is just showing how to load data. Data were not like that.
A number array of shape and senses by end features. So I guess that means we have 150 features.
Very good reasoning.
I don't understand what the X. This is splitting up the.
This is like, I tried to put the image of that, so it does like select some rows, to build a model and some rows to do have a holdout set to evaluate the model later.
So here's what I do. So I go to
use NBAC. It's much better.
Tell me why.
It allows you to zoom in.
But okay. But when I type plot.scatter, then no plot comes up.
You need to create a new figure, because you can update figures after you created them.
Do on this.
Yeah.
Do matplotlib inline.
That's what I do.
Why? Why not NBAC?
Because it doesn't work.
Yes, it does work.
I'm willing to learn.
Okay,
I'm
so
not on
what
Jupiter.
do you have to do?
I'm not on Jupiter. I'm on the old notebooks.
Which one?
I mean, I'm not on Jupiter.
Okay, then maybe then it doesn't work.
Okay.
Okay, then do inline. Also update your notebook.
Okay, I'll update my notebook.
So, what do you try to slice?
So I have just the first observation, or the first set of variables in the x-test.
So the first row or the first column?
First column.
Okay, then that's column, comma, 0.
X-test dot.
So the first one is the first axis. So this is, so you want all of the rows, and the zeros column. So it's column. So then comma.
It tells me where it is in memory.
So in where? I'm sorry.
Sorry. This.
Okay.
Go back to Matplotlib and inline. You have the old notebooks?
So do PLD.figure before that. Okay. Yeah, that took takes a long time. Okay, one. So, one more advice. So I use this matplotlib NBAC. Nobody's listening to me? Okay, so if you have trouble opening figures, make a new plot. So if you do anything, you need to do plt.figure before. So if you do just scatter, then it won't show anything. It will update the last figure you did. Do plt.figure to do in a new yeah. Because I use NBAC, which is a very awesome matplotlib backend, which allows you to zoom in. But you need to do plt.figure if you want to make a new figure.
Are we going to need that? Because I just changed to matplotlib inline.
No, you're not going to need it, but it's much cooler.
Yeah.
No, you can change all of them to inline if you want. Oh, cool, I have to go to the physics meeting. I don't think the Camp Hoc meeting is today, is it?
Hawk, do we have group meeting today?
This is group meeting. Good. Okay, so I'm already here. Okay, so who needs more time on this? Don't be shy. Okay, so then I think we're going to move.
Let's create an RA Fisher. Is that the RA Fisher?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is a very old data set. This is like the first ever application of predictive statistics, probably. Yeah, okay, so then let's do some actual machine learning. Okay? People listening? No. So, are people still working on this, or do people want to do actual machine learning now? Machine learning. You're just plotting. Okay, so you can keep plotting. I would have asked Thomas if I knew you just wanted to plot all day long, but.
We did that on Monday.
You did that on Monday. Okay, so.
Yeah,
So now you do the whole Monday session again with a new data set. Oh, actually, I should show the solution. So, I mean, so let's load the solution. Cool, there's a typo in the solution. It's always good. So here, what I did is I did a scatter plot just of the first axis against the second axis. And the second against the third axis. And so this is like, if you looked at the description, the x-axis is like the sepal length, and the y-axis is like the sepal width. So these are like some measurements on some flower. And I color the data points according to the class that they're in. So there's 3 classes, some Latin names of flowers that you can see in the description. And so you could make basically 6 of these plots, for example, using the Informant's-Mackey awesome corner library or Seaborn or anything. So you can plot each feature against the other features. Unfortunately, because it's 4-dimensional, we cannot see all 4 dimensions at once. Okay, but so there's 100 data points here. They're all described by 4 features, and there's 3 different classes that we want to predict. Okay, so now let's do some actual machine learning. So I'm going to load the digits data set again. So this is the second notebook. And I'm going to start splitting my data into a training and a test set. So now we do machine learning. So we use, I'm first going to, what? That's very easy. It's 3 lines of code. So I'm going to talk through the models a little bit later. Usually I give a tutorial to people who don't know that much math, so it's not that math heavy. And but I'm going to explain the math later a bit. For the moment, just accept linear SVC as a model that has linear prediction. It's awesome. Use it as a black box. It'll learn from the data and make the right predictions. Always. Not really always, but.
Can we get coffee now?
Yeah, you can get coffee if you. Why don't you do that? You probably would do. You had much more interesting data than the average data set. So we import the model that we want to use. So there's like, I don't know, 20 different classification models that all have their different pros and cons that we discuss later. And so this is like a class in Python, and I instantiate the class here in some object SVM. This object SVM will contain all the data I learned from the everything I learned from the data, and it also contains the algorithm to build the model and to do predictions. And what is 0.1? That's a magic parameter.
How do we find out what C means?
Haha, how do you find out what C means? I'll explain to you later, but also you look at the documentation, which tells you that this. So you can press, depending on your version of the notebook, Shift or Shift Tab or something like that, and it'll give you an explanation of what this model is, linear support vector machine, and so on. And so I set some parameter here, but I don't actually need to. So then I can build the model using the fit function. So everything in Scikit-Learn, models are always built using the fit function. And here I give it the training data, which is like these the pixel values of the handwritten digits, and ytrain, which is like 0 to 9, what the class is, what the actual digit is. And calling this fit function actually builds the machine learning model. So ta-da, we built the machine learning model. Now, if we want to apply this machine learning model to new data, we can use the predict function, and then we'll use the training data here and apply the machine learning model and get us some targets out. So these are the labels that the model thinks should be associated with this data. And if you compare this, it looks pretty much the same as ytrain. So I learned to predict from this matrix that describes the data, this target output labels. We can also do quantitative comparisons. So score computes how many of these are the same. So how many of the predictions that the models make are the same as the true labels, and it has there's 98.2% of them are the same.
Do my arrays look different from your arrays because the test train split is taking some random selection?
Yes. So there's so you can make this is random, so it shuffles the data in some random fashion. You can do random state equal to 0, and it'll be deterministic, and if you do that, then yours will be the same as mine. But you don't have to do that. And so basically, it makes more or less perfect predictions on a training set. We're really interested on how does it generalize to new data. And so if you do apply it on a test set, we see that the predictions it makes on a test set are 93% accurate. Okay, so this is like how you can apply a machine learning model in Scikit-Learn. You do instantiate the model, you call the fit function to build the model, you call the predictor the score function to apply or evaluate the model.
So what does it mean 99% accurate?
That means the predictions that it makes, so this svm.predict. So I mean, this makes one prediction for each data point. And 99% accurate means they're the same, like than the training labels were 99% of the time.
So it's just the number of times it was right divided by the number of
Yes.
times it was right.
So this is I probably need to float it. So this is the meaning of the score. So it is how often it is the same as the prediction. The prediction is the same as the true label. This is how you often measure how well you do in, for example, in particular in classification. Not really in regression. Okay, and now I was lying earlier. This model is actually not always correct. The model that is always correct is the random forest model. So. So now we're going to see how we can apply this, and surprisingly, it looks exactly the same. So, and there's like 20 models you can use, or more in Scikit-Learn, and you can import them, put them on your data, and score them. And the people in the back will tell you never to do this, just blindly, which is true. But if you want, you could just do it blindly because they all have the same interface. So what I just want you to do is do the same just with the iris data set and train a classifier of your choice. You can use anything in Scikit-Learn, for example, random forest or linear SVC. Or you can go into documentation and use any other model. And we're going to explain the models in a bit. Okay? Yeah, sure. Who here, by the way, who here knows what linear regression is? Okay. Who here knows what logistic regression is? Interesting. Wait, you logistic regression.
Don't move this.
Ah.
There's two frequencies.
There's two frequencies.
Yeah.
There's two frequencies. Okay, so here you have some data set and you want to build a model that possibly extracts some new representation of the data that might be better to work with for some reason. For example, you want to maybe reduce the dimensionality of your data. If you had this 4-dimensional data set, maybe we want to somehow project it down to be two-dimensional so we can visualize it better. So the idea is you have your training data, you build some form of model, and then you can use this model to transform any data into this new representation. And this could be, for example, a linear projection. Or it can be something similar, simple as just removing the mean and the variance. So here I load the digits data set again and split it into a training and a test set. And I'll show you how to remove the mean and the variance using Scikit-Learn. You might think this is silly, but actually it's not silly, because the important part is you always want to learn some transformation from your training data set and then apply it to your test data set. I'm going to go a little bit more detail maybe on this later. But so we want to remove the mean and the variance from the training set on the test set, which is maybe not entirely obvious. So what we're going to do is we're going to import the standard scaler, which is in the preprocessing module, which will first estimate mean and variance for each feature, each variable in the data set. So we instantiate the model. We call fit on xtrain. So that built the model, so that just computed mean and variance. And then if you want to transform the data into this mean removed standard deviation 1 version, we can call the transform method. So this is the other. So for predictions, we call the predict method. For transformations, we call the transform method. So they're like the two methods to apply a model. So doing this transformation gives us something that looks from the shape the same way as the input data. We just scaled it somehow. So it's the training data set is still like 1,300 something digits and with 64 grayscale values. Yeah, it's 8 by 8, well, 64. So we flattened it so that all the grayscale values are in one row.
So something in here flattened it?
Oh no, we flattened it before. So actually, if you go back to the first notebook, so digits.data is flat already. Digits.images was 8 by 8. Digits.data was flat. So in the scaled version, if you compute the mean, it's like numerically 0. And if you compute the standard deviation, so this is along the first axis, then it's numerically 1, except for if there are some variables where there was no variance. And in this case, it's 0, because you can't create variance if there's none. And then we can transform the test data set. So if you do this on a test data set, actually now the mean of the x-test transformed will not be 0, because we use the mean of the training data set. The thing is that if we want to do some further analysis, we need to apply the same transformation to the training and the test data set. So we need to subtract the mean of the training data set here. Okay, so this is a very simple example of using these transformations. And it's maybe not machine learning yet. A more interesting application is principal component analysis. Who here knows what principal component analysis does? Okay. Basically, it fits the big Gaussian to your data and finds the longest axes, or the axis of the Gaussian, basically. And so there's a parameter that tells you how many of the principal axes to keep. I tell it to only keep 2. Then again, now I fit it to the whole data set here. And again, I use the transform method to transform the data to the principal components. So now from 64 dimensions to 64 grayscale values, we then went down to 2 dimensions, which are now the 2 principal components. And now we can scatter them. So here the x-axis is one principal component, the y-axis the other principal component, and I colored each dot by the class. So here there are 10 different colors. Each corresponds to one kind of digit. So this is kind of displaying the whole digit data set in this reduced two-dimensional space. And this is useful because maybe you see some structure here. I mean, not all the classes are separated out, but some are pretty well separated out. And this is just one possible two-dimensional projection, and I didn't use the class labels at all. Any questions so far? Okay. I mean, you all know what PCA is. Yes?
Remember the prize for best questions.
Okay, so there's other kinds of transformations, and like unsupervised, and some of these are called manifold learning. They're like PCA, only nonlinear. So what does that mean? No one really knows. So they try to discover some structure in the data and bring it down to a lower dimension, but the assumptions are pretty fuzzy. Usually, I mean, you can write down the math. Interpreting the math is a different matter, but they make pretty pictures. And maybe they allow you to... I updated the figure above. That was not my plan. And maybe they tell you something about like the distribution of your data somehow. Hopefully. So here, the thing with these manifold learning methods is they optimize some objective, or they do some optimization on your data, so you can't usually apply them to new data. So you have to apply them to the whole data set, and you can't add new data to it, which is why you have to call this method, which is called fit transform, which will build the model and transform your data set. And then you can plot it. And there's basically not much else you can do except plot it and then look at it. Yes, that means for this method, you can't apply the transform to a test data set. So, how is that possible if you're not able to? Well, you have some, I mean, you do some optimization to, like, there's some objective function that involves the training points and these projections, and you optimize that, and that gives you the projections. And you can do the same thing for there's no like parametric model or anything. You optimize these points to fulfill something. You can optimize it jointly on the training and the test set. What function you're mapping on, what manifold you're mapping on. Yes, there's no explicit representation of the manifold in most of the manifold learning methods. They just give you some points out.
So then how would you use that?
So you can't use that for the train test, sort of, if you have a train test. But you can use it to plot your data set and do exploratory analysis. That's what you would use this for.
What was that phrase?
You can use this for exploratory data analysis.
Exploratory data analysis.
What you did on Monday, apparently, maybe.
I mean, if you go through this exercise and your different classes, so the different colors that you're plotting, are all jumbled together, that means that you're not going to be able to build an effective machine learning algorithm.
Not really. If they are well separated, then you know you can very easily build one. If they're not separated, it's unclear. Okay. Or I would say that. Because, I mean, it doesn't use the class labels, but if they're well separated and you see some structure, it's probably possible to discover the structure using other algorithms.
Wait, this does use the class labels? Or
it doesn't. Oh. I only use them to color the stuff. So you can see that some classes are actually like, they separate quite well, but it didn't use any class information to build this model. It just used some density structure of the data.
Is anyone working on compressing this 2D representation into a single scalar called hope?
you can just do that by doing here n components equal to 1. Okay. So, and now I want you to do exactly the same, but for another magic model, which is called t-SNE, which is the best magic model. And actually, I'm not going to explain this one or the t-SNE model because I don't know. It doesn't really help. Or does it? I don't know.
I thought it was quite instructive to read the t-SNE paper.
Really? Okay, well, okay, then read the t-SNE paper later. Okay. No, I can leave it on.
So from Scikit-Learn import t-SNE or?
From Scikit-Learn at Manifold.
Okay.
Why do you need to train and test a set for removing a mean and variance?
I don't need it for that, but this is a pre-processing. Usually I want to do some classification afterwards. I do this as a pre-processing for then applying like a classification model. And so I want to have a separate train and test set to train the classification model and then to test the classification model. But I want the testing to be like independent of the training. So it should be completely, it's simulating new data that I haven't ever seen before. So I can't use this data for estimating the mean. Because otherwise I would leak information from this data. So, no? Ah. So, so the, okay.
What was the point of removing the mean variance?
What was the point of this? It's good for numeric reasons for many models for many machine learning models.
Okay.
So it's a useful pre-processing. Maybe I should have made this more clear. Sorry.
We should try rerunning, but without doing that, and see whether we get such nice results with the ISO.
Let's use unscaled data.
Oh, well, we moved on. Right. Okay. When were we doing the scale?
I just used that to show what transform does.
Oh, right, and then we didn't carry on to use
Yeah.
it. So I guess now we could try using the transform
Yeah.
effect and see whether it helps.
Okay, maybe I should clarify this. Okay, so, but maybe to, I mean, if you want, I can try to explain again why you do a train test split for the scaling. No? Okay.
I'm not.
Yeah,
Sir?
entirely sure.
So the joke, I was joking about the hope thing, because you said it's for exploratory data.
Yeah.
But this picture with the TSNE,
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
right, that looks like
A complete-
you're saying I could take these two transform things as data and then do classification on these.
That's usually not what people do, but it shows you that this data is trivial,
So,
which was not obvious before.
but
Oh, you can do machine learning on this one if you want, but usually it works better.
this is a 2D plot, right?
Yeah.
But the data were
64.
64, right? So there's a huge dimensionality.
Yeah.
So it seems like it would be easier for me to now run a clustering algorithm on these variables rather than the 64.
Yeah.
So is
Yeah.
that what it's for?
Not really. That's not. It doesn't really work that well for that. For some reason.
But this looks like it's going to be easy to
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But maybe for this data set, but that's generally not how people use it. I mean, you could do that.
I guess. So what?
But the thing is, on this data set, basically, whatever you do works because it's so easy. But it's not obvious if you look at, like, I mean, because you can't look at it, and because it's 64-dimensional data. But this shows you that it's actually super trivial.
So if I was to do train a random forest classifier on the 64.
Yeah, I mean, it did 98% correct, right?
So you're saying I should expect to get about the same 98% if I feed it these?
Yeah. This is probably going to be worse.
Probably going to be worse.
Yeah.
Because I've
Yeah.
lost information in putting everything on the
Yes.
Huh. That's interesting.
Would you agree with that?
I think I'm just going to.
Do you guys know of any cases where someone has actually, like, aside from getting a nice plot, used TSNE to produce like scientific results? Interesting one.
I think you can, and to identify groups, I think Daniela's kind of using it, but it's more to identify structures. So I think it would be also cool to like do like link brushing kind of stuff where you mark some data that looks funky and then in the plot and then try to see why is that weird. But it's more for the interactive thing to come up with the hypothesis, I guess. I don't know if any.
I don't know.
Just a remark that I didn't make clear before. Removing mean and variance is useful for other machine learning models. It was just a demonstration of the interface. So removing mean and variance is good pre-processing for your data, but we didn't actually do anything with it here.
Is there a line for the way you want to do that, or does Scikit-Learn, does particular models tell you?
It's good for all models except for trees who don't care. Hmm?
The transform you do is different, right? Or as the ambulance transfer 0 to 1.
Well, both. It depends on the data set. Yeah. So either standard scalar or min-max scalar. Yeah.
So practically speaking, okay, once I know that the training set, the data set I have, will split very nicely, and now someone sends you 1,000 new images. How can I make use of this knowledge to actually classify those images?
So.
Or it just means that I have to use some method there.
Yeah, you have to use some supervised method. I mean, if you have the labels. So actually,
as my whole training set now, right? And then now I have some new set which I don't have the labels for.
Yeah.
Can I make use of this information that they?
Okay. Do you assume that you have the class labels for these?
For these, yeah.
Yes, but I mean, you can just build a supervised machine learning model on this.
So is this for situations where you don't have labels?
This is for situations where you don't have labels, or where you want to check before you run a supervised model. Do you think you have hope to run a supervised model, or you don't know what might be natural classes, or?
Does some misclassifications, right? So
there's some plotting.
Oh yeah.
Looking at this figure. So what do we get from this figure? Like when we are faced with this figure, do we immediately deduce something?
Yes.
Like what do we deduce?
We deduce that this model didn't use the outputs at all, right? It didn't use it, but you colored them using the outputs, and you can see that the classes separate very nicely, mostly. And so you can see that from the density, like if you could, in the density in the 64-dimensional space, the classes are very separate. They're much more dense, and there's a lot of space between the classes.
So what this guy is doing is taking a 64-dimensional space and it's projecting it down to 2D space.
But the projection is not linear.
In a non-linear projection designed to separate classes, basically. Okay.
They didn't use the class information.
Okay, designed to separate. Right. Okay, but designed
to reflect the density, to reflect the distances. Actually, this one is to reflect local distances. The things that were close before should be close afterwards.
Okay. So it doesn't preserve global.
Yeah, I mean it can't preserve global.
One thing maybe you should insist is they don't understand why we split in test, train and test. So they don't understand that the score is unbiased on the test set.
Yes, but that's but that only makes sense if you do a supervised model on top of the. No, or for the supervised model even. I think.
Yeah, she was not understanding why do we do that? Why don't we score simply on the training part?
Do you have a? Can you explain this well? I try to. I mean, I'll.
It's the worst because it's like, okay.
I mean,
telling
I
you
think
that there's some way to do it, and then it doesn't tell you how to do it, and it's like you have to spend your next 6 months trying to figure out.
Maybe you will talk about overfitting.
Yeah. That's actually the. So I'm going to do cross-validation and then overfitting. I think.
So this will be explained.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't want to say it. So this is like the first time I've ever used that kind of notebooks in any significant fashion.
Okay, I think people are kind of done. Right? All right.
I do have a question. So like transform and fit transform, I want to understand how they work. But I tried doing like the question mark thing and it doesn't.
You have the question mark afterwards.
Oh,
so you do.
Okay.
It's a method. So you have to do tsni.fitTransform.
Okay. Oh, does it have to be?
Well, if you have this lowercase tsni object, then it works, and without the parenthesis at the end.
Okay.
Maybe that doesn't work like this, unfortunately. I mean, you could do either tsni question mark. You didn't define it.
It was specifically with Python.
I just loaded the.
You need to run it.
Oh, I guess I hadn't. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, now it runs it. The other option is to do.
Because like I want.
And then do Shift Tab once it stops running.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't understand like how transform is flattening. I guess.
It's not.
Or how is it like you didn't specify anything? So how is it choosing how it transforms for like the? For
it tries to preserve local distances.
Okay.
Maybe I should say that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
But the colors seem to be the same. My blue blob looks like this.
There's some randomness. You can set the random state, and it'll be the same. Okay, so maybe let's go on. So here's sort of the plot you get. And so what does tsni tries to do? It tries to preserve. Get closer to the mic. Okay, so What this t-SNE tries to do is it tries to preserve sort of local distances. So points that are close together in the original 64-dimensional space are also close together here. And it's kind of like astonishing maybe that this model didn't use the label information at all. But now if you plot it and color it by the labels, you see they're all very, very well separated. And that kind of means that the parts that are in the same class are kind of much more denser, much closer together than between classes. And it's kind of maybe nice to see. And it also tells you this data set is probably very simple. It's very simple to separate this, which we also saw because like the linear model and the random forest model did very well on this. All right. So I just briefly, very briefly want to summarize the API. So our data is always a 2D NumPy array. If we have outputs, they're usually a 1D NumPy array. The samples are in the rows of, and we build our models with the fit function, with the training data, and possibly the training labels, if it's a supervised model. And we can make predictions for classification or regression using the predict method. And we can transform the data into a new representation using the transform method. So that's for things like preprocessing dimensionality reduction. And these are basically the three methods that you really need to know. So predict creates something like a y, and transform creates something like an x. So now the next thing I want to talk about is cross-validation. Who here knows what cross-validation is? Okay, I'm not going to then. Good. So I'll show you how to do cross-validation with Scikit-Learn. So I'm not going to explain it too much. So you want to use cross-validation to evaluate your model because it's basically it's more robust than doing a single split into training and test set. Particularly, you have every data point in the test set once, which is nice, and you get some estimate of uncertainty of how well you perform on the test set. And the way to do cross-validation, so here I loaded the iris data set, and I want to evaluate the linear SVM, or linear SVC, which is a linear support vector classifier model. And I can do cross-validation in Scikit-Learn. Oh, damn it, this is the wrong notebook. Okay, never mind. So I can do cross-validation Scikit-Learn by using the cross-val score function. So I can import cross-val score function. I import the model, and then the cross-val score function will split the data set for me. Here I say CV equal to 5, which means it will use 5 folds. It will split the data set 5 times. It will build 5 models and report back the accuracy, like how many points were classified correctly on each of the 5 holdout sets. And actually, I'm going to skip the rest here.
Is it possible to do cross-validation on other functions?
Of what do you mean by other? Yes, that's what I just really removed. So actually, I think I don't want to do this. So I want to do this. Or do I? Nah, maybe we'll do just plain cross-validation. So yeah, you can use different functions. Like if you're familiar with them, you can do like F1 score, maybe. Sorry, it's just F1. Or you can do precision or recall or any of a large number of different score methods. So I removed one part that I didn't want to remove. So you can also use different strategies for cross-validation. So what it does by default is it tries to preserve the number of samples in each fold. So here, this is the iris data set. We have 3 classes. Each of them is 50 samples. So if we look at y, this is what y looks like. And so it'll the standard cross-validation tries to make sure that this 1/3 of the data points in each of the folds will be of class 0, 1/3 of class 1, 1/3 of class 2. You can also use other methods for cross-validation. For example,
what if it's not a categorical?
Then, if it's not a categorical, then it'll just do the first number of samples divided by number of folds. So it'll just split in blocks. It'll not try to do any stratification for regression currently. I think we should, but so you can be more explicit about what kind of cross-validation you want to do. So if you just want to do standard k-fold without stratification, you can pass instead of CV a number, you can pass, or so if you want to stratify it actually, you can pass a CV object. So there's a lot of different ways to do cross-validation, and so this will do the same. But you can also do just k-fold, or you can do one that I like is shuffled split. And this will just shuffle your data set and split it randomly, so the test sets will not be disjoint.
So presumably different choices you make for how you do the splits determine what you should do with this list of output scores, right?
Well, I'm not a statistician, so I always compute the mean. Yeah. There's probably better things to do. I mean, you can, so for me, if they vary too wildly, I just don't trust the model and try something else. But yeah,
you can use the same method to get predictions for the individual sources.
Yes, you could do the same method to. Maybe. This is an engineering tutorial.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good for us to think about what we would do with a long list of
yeah. So this is usually this is to evaluate a model. This is not usually to make predictions on new data. So you could do it to make predictions on new data, but this is usually given some set. I just want a robust estimate of how well I can do. That's usually what you use cross-validation for. I'm going to talk about parameter search in a little bit, which I'll do slightly differently. But this is mostly you want to know how well does this model do, and you want to have a robust answer to that. Yeah?
What you're pretty near, I think, is basically just the accuracy. But if you have a class imbalance, if you have many more of one than another,
yeah.
Accuracy may not be a really good
yes.
representation of this. Can you do skill scores or similar kinds of measures that
I'm not sure what skills. You can use, so as I said, you can use like other scores like F1 score. My favorite one is AUC, which I use for imbalanced classes, area under rock curve. Okay. And that's much better. So this is really, so the default is bad for very imbalanced classes, that's true. And looking at like precision recall, AUC, F1.
I don't know what F1 is, but
it's the geometric? Yeah, geometric mean of precision and recall. Harmonic, damn it. Yeah, that's what I meant. Geometric is just the average. Sorry. What? No, no, it's the power and then the root. Yeah, it's the harmonic mean. Sorry. I can never get these straight.
What do you mean by robust?
So by robust, I mean you have, okay.
But actually, it's worth mentioning that, just to emphasize that point, in our context, in astronomy context, almost all our classification tests are amazingly unbalanced. Like sometimes, one of the ones we work on, there's like 10 to the 5 to 1.
Yeah.
So it is actually one of the things to look at if you want to use these supervised classifiers and things, is to look into the literature of unbalanced, because it really is a very different situation in terms of how you train and how you evaluate. Meaning that there's far more things in one class than the other. So like far more stars and quasars.
So if you could make a good classifier that said everything was a star.
It's an amazingly good classifier to just say everything's a star.
Yeah.
It's also worth looking at the development literature for this, because this is something they dealt with for more than a century. There's a famous paper from the 1890s on tornado forecasting, and it's a similar thing. If you say there will never be a tornado, you're right the vast majority of the time. But that's a community that's thought a lot about this classic balance issue and different ways of quantifying how well you do rather than using the accuracy, which is often misleading.
So I always forget, what's the computer science term for purity? Is it precision or precision? Yeah. And completeness is recall?
No, but precision and purity are not the same, right? Are they?
Well, the way that we use it, it would be precision.
Okay.
Yeah, different, that's another thing, yeah, different communities use very different words for things.
But I gotta remember, purity is precision, and completeness is recall for sure.
Yeah, completeness is definitely recall. Purity and precision, I thought they were slightly different, but I'm not sure.
I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
I mean, they're all some function of true positives and false positives and true negatives. So, anyhow, you cannot. There's so many of these. So what I wanted to do as an exercise here is just do cross-validation with this classifier on the same iris data set, and then compare using stratified k-fold and just k-fold, and try 3-fold and 5-fold. And you'll get very different results, and I wanted you to think about why they're very different. You can look at the help, like if you import stratified k-fold and k-fold, you can look at the help here to see what arguments you need to specify. Okay? You can also play with different scoring methods if you like. That's up to you.
If we choose the number of CVs to be one less than the number of labels, does that leave one out?
You can, yes, but you can also just leave one out.
You need one less than the number of data points?
No, wait. Yeah, that's the same, right?
The same number of data.
Yeah.
Is the same number of
Yeah.
to the number of data.
But there's
Yeah.
also leave one
Yeah, there's also leave one out.
routine in that same package.
And it works the same as shuffle split.
No, shuffle split.
I mean, you call it in the same way.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's like 10 of these by now. There's also like if you have additional extra information, like groups in your data, and I removed stuff. It was not a good idea. I removed things and I get questions about all the things I removed.
Yes, yeah.
How long until the break? Is it now?
I will give people time for the exercise.
Yes.
Say we have a break. We didn't do it exactly yet.
Wait, but it started at 9, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
not, I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly.
Yeah. But I want to get a bagel. You're not following along. I'm very disappointed.
Well, it's because I don't have the right packages installed, and I don't want to slow
What?
everyone down just to get shit to work. So that's why. it's a collective response to not slowing things down.
No.
I don't normally use this, so.
But what's not working?
I don't know what.
Yeah, I think you can just ignore it. I think it's working. You get all the pots.
But I also don't know how to do any of these things. I don't even know what the questions are asking. I don't know what this means.
No, that's because you got late.
Yeah.
Panic. I'm sorry.
It's my own fault. I just have like way too many things going on this week.
Yeah.
I'm barely making it on time. It's going to be so great next week. Are you coming next week?
What?
To the summit?
Oh, yeah.
Are you presenting?
I'm presenting a lightning talk.
That's it. That's good.
Also going to tell people how not to try to run an incubator.
You should talk to Brittany. She also has thoughts on how to run an incubator.
Yeah, I think we have a meeting.
I would like to sit in on
No.
that too, by the way.
Yeah, it's on the agenda. It's not called that.
What is it called? Something stupid.
Something with incubator.
Yeah. It's just a different way of dividing up the data set.
Yeah. I left out stuff and it was a bad idea.
So the score comes
You didn't shuffle split on the cells of the notebook?
to make sure you get the same results.
No, just to remove other thing.
So so the score is that you're taking the the data that you've held out. You're plugging this.
I'm wondering if I make the piece slightly thicker.
Question?
Isn't that what the red thing means?
Ah. Oh. Damn it.
So I'm doing the bad thing, which is asking a question before reading the docs.
That's okay.
What do I get out of stratified k-fold? So I mean, clearly these two things, these two are different. One of them has 3 components, one of them has 5 components. I'm suspecting your plot CV is.
So the red part is the test set and the blue part is the training set.
Aha. Okay. So this has been split. Oh, and the data was already. No.
There were the first third is zeros, the second part is ones, the third part is twos.
Right. Okay.
So it'll first take the 1/3 of the ones, 1/3 of the.
Okay. Okay.
So I actually should have gone through this, and everything would have been much clearer.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm unhappy that I deleted cells. Is there any more red things? I forgot to look out for the red things. No, I mean, are there any red things up? I mean, no. Okay. I wanted that. I wanted to do that.
Now smile into the camera.
Where's the camera? So for the benefit of everybody else. Can I see this? That's okay. Maybe I should plug it into a power source. Do I have a power source with me? Is there?
So that's why when you do the regular people, because the list was already ordered, you do 3, and so 1/3, 1/3. Then you do the training set 1.
Thank you.
So when you did people, 3, you got 0, 0, 0.
Oh yes, I did get that.
And I think it's
I'm
because
doing it with 5 now.
Yeah, with 5 it works, it mixes a little bit. Yeah, with 3. Or no, 5 is the first 5 should only have all from one.
Oh yeah,
But the test set also, but the training set also has some of this class, right?
Okay, but then when it's 3, then why do you get 0?
Because the training set has none of these. So the training set doesn't contain the class that's in the test set. Has
1 and 2 and no 0.
Are you going to get okay.
So you for this, but okay, but when you take the first 5th, the training set should only have 1.
No, the test set only has 1 class. The test set is
which is the big one.
The big one is the training set.
Okay, gotcha.
And you won't stratify capable on this. We'll stratify
So
capable
when you
correctly.
3, then the test set has the other class that's not in the training.
So this is fine.
Autumn 2008.
Do you have a question?
Were you
I updated
Okay.
Scikit-Learn in the middle of this.
That was a very good
now
decision.
Everything is broken. So I don't think
Only
SVC was broken before.
So the reason that is because you installed with conda and then you updated with pip.
That's higher than.
Yes. So you can do conda update or do maybe just delete a folder and do conda update.
Or you can do rm minus rf /.
Yes. No, but
Everything on the machine. Yeah, I'm not quite that much.
I think that's a good solution. But
I don't know how to use a Mac. I know how to use Linux.
So I think you can Scikit minus.
Yeah, I installed Anaconda and I couldn't get rid of it. So it's just hanging out.
Yeah.
I mean, we can just write down on like and put in what else, and like
Don't specify a scoring.
It's accuracy. Oh.
Oh, accuracy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's probably a better way, but I don't.
What would you do if I assigned this project to you?
I would work on something else.
Oh, it's true. You think about it for a while. We talked about it, and then you decided you want to do it.
Yeah.
Is that what happened with your PhD?
Yeah, except it
Oh,
was like a year and a half.
Maybe it'll work. Otherwise,
So did you start with Galaxy?
remove the folder and do pip. It's just your folder contains a mixture of 2 versions.
Yeah, that didn't last
Yeah, so I updated it too.
Yeah.
I had the experience the other way around.
Yes.
So, sorry, can you explain the question I should be answering with the exercise?
Yeah, we have that in Sloan too.
Yeah.
So use those for SVC, for linear SVC, but
To evaluate the linear. So if you use this to evaluate linear SVC with stratified cross-validation and with not stratified cross-validation.
okay.
Then you get some results.
So
they are surprising.
So what goes into the linear SVC? The result of stratified k-fold?
People that really don't know how
So
to do it, but it would be
you use the cross-val score function.
Deckcam turns on, you get the first.
The cross-val score function
is if you're a robot
applies the model.
Sky, you don't know whether that image is good or bad.
stealing from the one that you did. This one. Got it. Okay.
Yes.
How surprising is
So this retrains the model.
How surprising is that image given the two previous images? And you keep on going.
Can I do that without CV?
Well, yes. That does accuracy.
Yeah. So then pick the other one. Okay, so that.
Because images are big.
And then I would just use, for CV, I would choose a different one of the. Okay.
Once the survey.
And try k-fold and stratified k-fold.
The discussion started yesterday, so I thought it would be nice to have a proper moment. You had a bit of a discussion at the table yesterday too, or do you think it was?
Okay, yeah.
So
here it's doing leave one out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm doing this right, and I'm not sure what the numbers are supposed to look like.
This is weird.
So I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're doing it right.
Okay. So then what am I supposed to see between these? I mean, this is
try it with 3.
With 3.
So I should now be able to do.
So I did the number of folds.
Okay.
That's what you're supposed to see.
Okay.
Sorry. What I realized when doing these tutorials before is that our current cross-validation interface is really messy, and I don't like it at all because you
didn't
always
know that it was stratified. I thought it was
now we're doing
and we changed how the stratified works, which makes before it was more or less shuffled. Now it's not shuffled anymore, and it's screwed up with a lot of people. Anyhow, so no, like so the argument that the k-fold object takes is completely different from the argument that the stratified k-fold takes, and the sample split, and they all need like the number of samples or the y or something, and the new interface is much nicer. But it's not merged yet.
Okay, and then the last question is, I guess to be able to figure out how you can get more similar results, what is the difference in the way these two work? So I don't know what a k-fold or a stratified k-fold is.
Okay. So
if there's a way to briefly summarize that.
So k-fold does this. So you have your data set here. You split it up into 5 different parts. So you take the first, fifth, or 3. Let's say 3 parts for this, or the first fifth, the second fifth, the third fifth, and so on. You declare this the test set. Build a model on these 4. Evaluate it on this test set.
Okay.
And you declare this. So this gives you one evaluation of the model.
Okay.
And you declare this the test set. Trying on these parts, this gives you another evaluation of the model. This way you get 5 scores.
Okay.
That's what k-fold does.
Okay.
Stratified k-fold does something similar, but it tries to make sure that the fraction of the class in each fold is preserved. So if 1/3 of your data is class 1, then 1/3 of the data points in fold 1 will also be 1.
Okay. And so this. Okay, that's the number of folds. Okay. Okay, thank you.
So mine is what I'm assuming is that
So this is, by the way, this is what I got out of going to Strata.
That's better than I expected.
Yeah. Oh, also something. Bloomberg was giving away phone batteries, like the portable. Damn. That's the 2 things I got out of going to Strata. Oh, and Travis' new book. They gave like there was a giant anaconda stand. It was like huge, and it had like 3 sides. And they gave away Travis's new book. NumPy. Apparently he had a NumPy book that he wrote like 10 years ago, and he made a new one. Oh.
Yeah, it was.
But then I don't.
That fraction. Whereas the first one doesn't take into account your. That's what I asked.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I do the number of folds equals 3, cross balance score returns 0, 0, 0.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what that.
That's the question.
Every other integer returns non-zeros.
That is the and so did you think long and hard about why this is?
We've been
Scratching speculating, yeah.
Yeah, so what is your speculation? Which data points will be in the training set?
Sorry,
Or
which one? Is this the one where you're taking blocks of the shuffle? So are we getting basically the first one has all of population 0 and 1 but none of 2, and the second one has all of 0 and 2 and none of 1?
Yes.
Is that
Divide up the 3
so there's
zeros.
blocks. Okay.
Is that what's happening?
Yes.
0.
So the data is already split among thirds.
So there's a shuffle option that will shuffle them, and then it makes more sense. Or you can use the stratified option.
Oh, okay. So we're. Oh, okay.
I don't. Sorry.
It's not shuffle. So
But you can explain, right? Okay, I think I'm gonna explain, and then we can break. Okay, so I briefly want to go through like the solution, and then afterwards we're gonna break. So, okay, no, I'm not gonna shout. So, if you do like the cross-validation with a linear SVC and use k-fold with k to 3, you get scores of 0, 0, 0. Which might be a bit surprising. If you do stratified k-fold, you get scores that are like around 1, so they're very good. And the question is, okay, why is that happening? If you do like 5-fold cross-validation, for example, this is not happening. Or at least not as badly. And the reason this is happening is that k-fold just takes the first third of your data as the first fold, the second third of your data as the second fold, and the third third of your data as the third fold. But as you could see, the data is like ordered. So the first third is all of class 0. So when you do the cross-validation, the first split puts all the zeros in the test set and all the 1s and 2s in the training set. Obviously, you can't learn anything about zeros just from classes 1 and 2. So your predictions will be nonsensical. So you have 0 accuracy. For the second split, you put all the 1s in the test set and 0s and 2s in the training set, so you can't learn anything about 1s. Again, your accuracy will be 0. So if you do cross-validation, see if your data has any ordering, and if this ordering like is important for you. You can use stratification that will sort of solve the problem, or you can shuffle the data. So here I just told it to shuffle, or I can shuffle the data before. But really you should always also think about why the data might be ordered, or if there's correlation in the data. And if there's some ordering, if you see new data, how will this new data fit into the ordering? And so ordering of the data sometimes is important.
So is there a time when shuffling data is not the best choice?
Yes, there's a time when shuffling the data is not the best choice. Let's say you have a time series, and your signal changes over time. What you want to measure changes over time. And so when you do cross-validation, basically you will, if you take the beginning of the time series and try to predict on the end, you will do badly, because it's very different at the beginning and at the end. If you shuffle, you destroy that. and you don't realize that there's a correlation in the data. But when you get new data in, it will look even more different because the time went on. And so you will do worse than you did in your cross-validation. So that's why I think... Yes, if the data is correlated, you should do something smarter than k-fold probably. If you have time series, there's other techniques, but basically shuffling can hide that the data was correlated. So that's why we don't shuffle. If the data is correlated, be careful. Is more the point. Okay, that's all, and I think we're gonna have how long's the break? Half-hour break now. Now I'm gonna